Welcome to Momentum Mind, the place where your mindset meets action. If you're ready to unlock your potential, overcome mental blocks, and turn small steps into unstoppable momentum, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into a story that will transform the way you think about success and growth, so get comfortable, because your mind is about to expand. Chapter 1. The two mirrors. Sophia sat on the edge of the old wooden bench in the high school gym, her backpack slung carelessly to one side. The air smelled faintly of sweat and varnished wood, a smell she had learned to associate with both effort and failure. She watched the basketball team practice from afar, their shoes squeaking on the polished floor, balls thudding against the boards with relentless rhythm. Each player moved with a confidence she didn't yet feel in herself. She had always believed she was smart, capable, someone destined to succeed. That belief had carried her through elementary school with ease, through middle school with pride. But now, as she struggled through geometry proofs she couldn't wrap her mind around, she felt her confidence cracking like fragile glass. Mistakes were no longer small inconveniences, they were glaring signs of her inadequacy. Sophia's teacher, Mr. Halvorsen, noticed her from across the gym. He had a quiet presence, a way of making the room feel alive without raising his voice. "Sophia," he called, gesturing her over with a nod. She hesitated, then walked across the gym floor, the noise of bouncing balls fading in her ears until all she could hear was the rapid beat of her own pulse. "Sit," he said, pointing to the bench beside him. "I wanted to show you something." He pulled a small, handheld mirror from his bag. "Look into this mirror," he said, handing it to her. Sophia frowned. It was just a mirror. She looked at her reflection. Hair messy from her morning rush, cheeks slightly flushed, eyes tired but alert. "I don't see what's special about this," she said, handing it back. "Not yet," he said. "Now look into this one." He handed her a second mirror, slightly larger, with faint scratches on its surface. Sophia peered into it. At first, the reflection was just her again, but as she stared, it seemed to shift. She saw herself taking a test she had failed, watching the red marks on her paper, feeling the weight of disappointment. She saw herself hesitating in front of the basketball team, afraid of fumbling a pass. She saw herself frustrated, angry, convinced she wasn't good enough. "This mirror shows your fixed self," Mr. Halvorsen explained gently. "The part that believes your abilities are set in stone. That mistakes define you. That success is only for the naturally talented." Sophia's stomach sank. She had felt that mirror's truth many times before, but seeing it reflected back at her so plainly made it almost unbearable. "Now," he said, "look into this one again." He pointed to the first mirror. "This one reflects your growth self." Sophia gazed into it. At first, it was the same tired, frustrated face. But slowly, she noticed something else, a spark in her eyes, a tension in her shoulders that suggested readiness, not defeat. She saw herself trying again, practicing the geometry proofs, asking questions she didn't know the answers to, struggling, failing, and then trying again. She saw herself missing a shot on the basketball court, but then adjusting her stance, learning the rhythm, and finally scoring. "It's subtle," Mr. Halvorsen said. "Not instant. But the more you choose to see yourself this way, the more real it becomes." Sophia felt a strange mixture of hope and doubt. Could it really be that simple? Could seeing herself differently change what she could do? The bell rang, echoing through the gym, and students began to filter out for the next class. Sophia clutched both mirrors, turning them over in her hands. On her way out, she passed a group of classmates laughing about a test. One of them, Carla, looked at her and smirked. Still struggling with math, she teased. Sophia felt the familiar pang of shame, the mirror of her fixed self urging her to retreat. But she remembered the spark she had seen in the growth mirror. Instead of turning away, she walked past Carla and whispered to herself, "I'll figure this out." That night, at her desk in her small bedroom, Sophia spread her textbooks open. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of her desk lamp. She tried a proof she had failed earlier. The numbers twisted in her mind, refused to line up. Frustration bubbled, but she remembered Mr. Halvorsen's words. She breathed, closed her eyes, and imagined herself understanding, even if just a little at a time. She tried again and slowly, the solution began to emerge. Not perfectly, but enough to see a path forward. Her heart lifted, small but powerful, as if she had discovered a hidden staircase inside herself. The next morning, she arrived at school with the same uncertainty as yesterday, but also with a quiet determination. She saw the basketball team again, and this time, she joined in the warm-up. She missed a pass almost immediately. The old voice in her head shouted, "You're terrible. You'll never get it." But another voice, quieter, steadier, reminded her of the growth mirror. Mistakes are proof you're learning. Try again. She took a deep breath, adjusted her stance, and caught the next pass. The small victory made her smile. She knew this was only the beginning. Every failure she had avoided in the past had been a choice, a decision to protect herself from discomfort. But now, discomfort was no longer something to fear, it was a sign that she was moving forward. In the lunchroom, she overheard her friends talking about a difficult upcoming exam. Normally, she would have nodded along silently, resigned to the fear that she wasn't smart enough. But now, she found herself offering encouragement, suggesting ways to practice and learn. The words surprised her, both in their confidence and in the warmth they carried. That afternoon, Sophia met with Mr. Halvorsen again. He smiled at her as she approached. "I can see the change," he said. "It's subtle, but it's there. Remember, growth doesn't happen in leaps. It happens in steps, in persistence, in the way you face challenges instead of avoiding them." Sophia nodded, feeling the weight of possibility settle in her chest. She wanted to believe him completely, wanted to feel that her failures were not the end, but a doorway. Yet a small doubt lingered, a whisper from the old mirror: what if you're wrong? What if you're not capable? She held both mirrors tightly as she walked to her next class, feeling the tension between fear and hope, between old habits and new possibilities. And in that moment, she realized that the journey ahead was not about instant success or proof of talent. It was about a choice she would make every day, every challenge, every setback, whether to see herself as fixed or to see herself as growing. As she entered the classroom, the first problem on the board caught her eye. It looked impossible. Her heart thudded in her chest, and she felt the familiar tug of fear. But this time, she took a deep breath, lifted her head, and whispered to herself, "I can learn this." And for the first time, that small phrase felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Outside, the sky was overcast, the wind stirring leaves into restless patterns. Something felt poised on the edge, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting to see which path Sophia would take next. Chapter 2, the first challenge. The morning air was crisper. Sophia walked through the school gates. Leaves scattered across the pavement, tumbling in little whirlwinds created by the wind, and the chatter of students swirled around her. She carried her backpack more lightly than usual, though it was stuffed with books and notebooks. Something inside her had shifted since yesterday, a small flame of possibility that refused to be ignored. Her first class was science, a room filled with tall shelves of glass beakers, jars of strange powders, and a faint smell of chalk and chemicals. Mr. Patel, her teacher, was a brisk man with keen eyes that seemed to see straight through hesitation. He was writing the day's assignment on the board as Sophia slid into her seat, an experiment that combined chemistry and precise measurement, one she had always found intimidating. As she looked at the instructions, her heart sank slightly. The formulas were complicated. One misstep could ruin the entire experiment. For a moment, the old voice from the fixed mirror whispered, "You're not ready for this. You'll fail." Sophia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She imagined the growth mirror, the spark she had seen there, the image of herself trying, failing, and trying again. Failure is not the end, she reminded herself. It's proof I'm learning. With steady hands, she began to gather her materials. She measured each chemical carefully, checking and rechecking her calculations. A small mistake occurred almost immediately. She misread a measurement and had to start over. Normally, she would have thrown up her hands and given up. Today, she paused, shook her head, and started again, silently repeating, step by step. One thing at a time. Across the room, her lab partner, Jamal, noticed her struggle. "You okay?" he asked. His tone was neutral, but Sophia detected a hint of expectation, as if he assumed she would fail. "I'm fine," she said, but she added a small smile. "I just need to try it again." Jamal watched her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Usually, Sophia would have abandoned the experiment or handed him the work. But now, she was persistent, calm, focused. By the end of the period, the mixture in her beaker bubbled just as the instructions promised. It wasn't perfect, a slight discoloration hinted at a minor misstep, but it worked. Sophia felt a rush of satisfaction, not from proving herself right, but from the simple act of persisting, of refusing to let fear dictate her actions. The next challenge came unexpectedly during lunch. Sophia usually sat with a small group of friends, laughing and chatting about trivial things. But today, she noticed a notice on the bulletin board about the school debate team, inviting students to try out. Her stomach fluttered. Public speaking had always terrified her. Standing in front of a crowd and speaking without making mistakes had seemed impossible. Her old instincts whispered, "You'll embarrass yourself. Just ignore it." But another voice, the quieter, steadier one of the growth mirror, nudged her. "You can learn this. You can try without fully understanding why. She tore off a slip of paper and scribbled her name. The weight of it felt strange, equal parts fear and excitement. She knew that signing up was only the first step. There would be challenges, humiliation, and mistakes. But there was also the possibility of growth later that afternoon. Sophia walked home with her brother, Leo, who was a few years older and had a natural talent for everything he tried. He had always been effortlessly good at sports, school, music, everything, and Sophia had often compared herself unfavorably. "Hey," Leo said, tossing her the ball he had been juggling. "How was science?" Sophia told him about the experiment, emphasizing the mistakes she had made and how she had corrected them. Leo raised his eyebrows, impressed. "You actually finished it?" She nodded, and for the first time, she felt proud of the process, not just the result. "Yeah. I messed up a few times, but I figured it out." Leo shrugged, smiling. "Good for you. Most people would just give up." That evening, Sophia sat at her desk, the debate slip of paper in front of her. Her mind raced with possibilities, speaking in front of a crowd, fumbling her words, being judged. The fear was real, but it no longer felt like a chain. It felt like a signal that she was moving toward something important. The next morning, Sophia walked into the debate room, a small, bright classroom filled with posters of famous speakers and past champions. Other students were already there, rehearsing lines or nervously shuffling papers. She found an empty seat and took a deep breath. The coach, a woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, began calling names. When she called Sophia's stomach lurched, but she stood and walked to the center of the room. The first sentence she spoke came out shaky, almost trembling, but she didn't stop. She remembered the growth mirror, the image of herself embracing mistakes as part of learning. She stumbled over a word, corrected herself, and kept going. By the end, she was not perfect, not even close. But something had shifted inside her. The fear had not disappeared, but it no longer controlled her. She had faced it, used it, and moved forward anyway. As she returned to her seat, a few classmates nodded at her, impressed. One of them, Max, leaned over and whispered, "Not bad for a first try." Sophia smiled, realizing that the approval was nice, but the real victory was private, a quiet triumph in the heart. That night, Sophia lay in bed, replaying the day. Experiment succeeded. She had faced her fear in debate. She had not always performed perfectly, but she had performed at all. And the thrill of possibility pulsed through her veins. Yet, even in that moment of quiet triumph, a shadow lingered. The old mirror of fixed mindset whispered faintly from the corners of her mind, reminding her that talent was rare, that people like her might try but would never truly excel. Sophia's eyes widened in the dark as she realized that growth was not just about small victories. It was a journey that would demand persistence, courage, and a willingness to stumble, sometimes painfully, many times. The real challenge was just beginning. Outside, the wind howled softly, rattling the window pane. A sense of tension filled the night air, as if the world was waiting to see whether Sophia would embrace the path of growth fully, or retreat to the familiar comfort of fear. Chapter 3. The voice inside Sophia woke to the low hum of rain against her window, the sky grey and heavy, pressing down on the quiet streets outside. She sat on the edge of her bed, pulling her knees close, thinking about the day ahead. Science experiments, debate practice, homework, it all felt manageable, but an undercurrent of unease coiled in her chest. It wasn't the tasks themselves that scared her. She had begun to learn how to face those. It was the voice inside, the one she had tried to ignore, the one that whispered her limits, her inadequacy, her failures that might define her. It had always been there, like an old friend she didn't like, soft at first, then sharper when she was tired or distracted. During breakfast, her mother asked her how school was going. Sophia smiled, recounting her small victories, the experiment she had completed, the debate tryout. Her mother's eyes brightened, and she nodded. "You're really pushing yourself, Sophia. I'm proud of you." But as her mother left the kitchen, Sophia's smile faltered. That voice crept in again. "It's luck, not skill. You just got lucky this time. What if next time you fail completely?" Sophia clenched her hands around her coffee mug, the warmth grounding her. She remembered the mirrors Mr. Halvorsen had shown her, the fixed self that feared mistakes, and the growth self that saw learning in every stumble. She breathed deeply. "I can learn this," she whispered, louder this time, as if speaking to the voice itself. "Even if I fail, I can keep going." At school, her second challenge arrived unexpectedly in the hallway. A poster announced tryouts for the upcoming school play. Sophia had never considered acting before. Standing in front of an audience, expressing herself, speaking lines that weren't her own, it was terrifying. Her palms sweated as she read the details. The voice inside hissed immediately. You'll make a fool of yourself. Everyone else is better. You can't do this. Sophia paused, the fear heavy and real. Then she recalled her debate experience, how trembles had given way to determination, how small steps had built her courage. Fear isn't the enemy, she told herself. It's the signal that growth is possible. That afternoon, in English class, Sophia's teacher, Ms. Carver, asked her to read aloud. The sentence was long and twisting, filled with unfamiliar words. The old instinct to shrink, to avoid, surged. But she straightened in her chair and began reading. Her voice wavered, stumbled, but she kept going, correcting herself as she went. When she finished, a few classmates clapped, but more importantly, she felt something deep in her chest, relief, pride, and a strange spark of excitement. Later, during lunch, she met her friend Nora outside under the covered benches. Nora's eyes were bright, full of curiosity and humor. So, she said, teasing, you're going to try out for the play now. Sophia hesitated. I think so, she admitted, feeling both fear and exhilaration. Nora grinned. Good. I think you'd be amazing. You just have to, not be scared of messing up. Sophia nodded. The words felt strangely familiar, like they were echoing her own internal struggle. She had spent so long avoiding mistakes, believing they defined her, that she had almost forgotten the thrill of trying anyway. That evening, Sophia returned home, rain streaking her window pane. She sat at her desk, staring at the lines of dialogue she had printed from the play. Each word seemed heavy with possibility, yet also with risk. She read a line aloud. She stumbled. She stopped. She tried again and again. Her cat, Luna, jumped onto the desk, curling around her notebooks, purring. Sophia laughed softly, a sound of relief and courage mingled together. The voice inside tried to intervene again, whispering, "You're not an actress. You'll fail," but she leaned back, eyes closed, imagining the growth mirror. She saw herself learning, faltering, improving, her mistakes acting like stepping stones rather than walls. Slowly, the voice inside began to change. Its tone softened, became curious instead of cruel, as if it was testing her rather than condemning her. By the time her mother called from the kitchen that dinner was ready, Sophia had rehearsed the lines several times. She felt exhausted but alive, the tension of fear now laced with possibility. She realized that the hardest part wasn't the experiment, the debate, or the play. It was the constant conversation inside her own mind, the way she had always believed she couldn't overcome it. Later that night, Sophia lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet except for the soft tapping of rain and the occasional creak of the house settling. She thought about all the moments she had faced fear that day and the small victories she had won. She realized something unsettling yet thrilling: the growth she desired wouldn't be easy. The voice inside wasn't going away. It would always be there, sometimes louder, sometimes subtler, but she could choose whether to listen to its warnings or its challenges. And then, just as she was drifting toward sleep, her mind wandered to the play. What if she actually tried out? What if she stumbled horribly in front of everyone? Could she bear it? The room seemed to hold its breath. Sophia knew that tomorrow she would have to confront that fear directly. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a mix of terror and anticipation. She pulled the blankets closer and whispered to herself, "I can try. I will try." Outside, the rain began to ease, leaving the streets glistening under a dim streetlight. Shadows stretched long and thin, the world poised between night and morning. Sophia felt the tension keenly, a reminder that the next day would test not only her skills but the very core of her beliefs. Somewhere deep inside, the two mirrors remained, one reflecting fear and limitation, the other reflecting possibility and growth. Sophia closed her eyes and knew that soon, she would have to step fully into one of them, or risk being trapped between both forever. Chapter 4. The first fall. The morning air was heavy with humidity, pressing down on Sophia as she walked to school. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, though it held nothing more than books and notebooks. Today was the day of the school play tryouts, the day she would confront the fear that had whispered at the edges of her thoughts for weeks. Her steps were cautious as she entered the theater room, a small, dim space lined with folding chairs and tall mirrors that reflected nervous faces. Other students were warming up, muttering lines under their breath, stretching arms and legs as if preparing for battle. Sophia's heart thudded, each beat echoing like a warning drum in her chest. The coach, Ms. Green, stood at the front with a clipboard, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "We'll begin with monologues," she said, voice crisp and unyielding. "One at a time. Show me what you've got." Sophia's stomach twisted. She had rehearsed her lines countless times in her room, in front of her mirror, in front of Luna the cat. But now, in front of people who could judge her, her voice shook. She wanted to back away, to let someone else go first, to hide her name was called. The room fell quiet. Every eye turned toward her. She walked to the center of the room, knees stiff, palms damp. The first line slipped past her lips, and it was wrong. She stumbled, mispronouncing a word, forgetting the next line. The room seemed to expand around her, the silence pressing in. Her cheeks burned. She felt exposed, foolish, like a performer stripped bare before a critical audience. The voice of the fixed mirror roared now, louder than ever. See? You're not good enough. You can't do this. You never could. Sophia froze. Her mind raced, seeking escape, imagining retreat. But somewhere deep inside, a smaller, steadier voice whispered, "This is the moment you've been preparing for. Keep going." One step at a time. She swallowed hard and tried again. The words trembled, unsteady but present. She stumbled through the middle lines, then paused, closed her eyes briefly, and forced herself to continue. By the final sentence, her voice had gained a small measure of strength. She opened her eyes and saw the faint nod of Ms. Green, the subtle acknowledgement of effort. It wasn't perfect. Far from it. Sophia's heart sank and soared at the same time. She had fallen spectacularly, yet she had finished. She had faced the fear instead of fleeing. Outside, in the hallway, students whispered among themselves. Sophia overheard a few comments, some kind, some snide, some curious, but none of them mattered as much as the internal dialogue raging within her. She felt a strange mix of shame and pride, the taste of disappointment mingled with the thrill of courage. During lunch, she sat alone for a moment, replaying the audition in her head. Every stumble, every misstep, every awkward pause. The old instinct urged her to hide, to quit, to avoid the judgment she imagined would come. But she closed her eyes and pictured the growth mirror again. She saw herself learning from mistakes, seeing them as guideposts rather than verdicts. The afternoon brought math class, where she faced a problem she couldn't immediately solve. In the past, she would have surrendered, convinced herself incapable. Today, she stayed, scribbling attempts, erasing, recalculating, trying again. Slowly, piece by piece, the solution emerged. It was messy and imperfect, but it existed. Sophia realized that failure was no longer a final statement. It was an event, a stepping stone, a challenge to learn from. And yet, the sting of her public stumble at the audition lingered, a reminder that growth required more than persistence. It demanded resilience, the willingness to confront humiliation and fear repeatedly. That evening, she returned home, dragging her feet up the staircase to her bedroom. She dropped her bag and sat by the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Rain had returned, pattering softly against the glass. Her mind was a storm of thoughts, embarrassment, doubt, hope, determination. Leo, her brother, peeked in. "Audition go okay?" he asked, casual but observant. Sophia hesitated. I messed up, she admitted. "I stumbled a lot." Leo shrugged. "Good. That's the point. You tried. Most people wouldn't even get up there." His words made her pause. She had spent so long equating mistakes with failure, but perhaps the real measure of growth was showing up, no matter the outcome. Later, lying in bed, Sophia reflected on the day. She realized that she felt more alive than she had in weeks, energized by the confrontation with fear, by the act of attempting despite uncertainty. And yet, the fixed voice in her mind had not disappeared, it had only grown quieter, lurking, waiting. She understood something crucial: growth was not linear. It was a battle with herself as much as with any external challenge. The first fall was inevitable, but it carried a lesson that perfection never could: courage, persistence, and the knowledge that mistakes could be transformed into learning. As she drifted toward sleep, the shadows of the room stretched long across the ceiling, and the rain softened to a gentle whisper. A sense of tension remained, a promise of tests and trials ahead, as if the world itself were holding its breath to see whether Sophia would rise again, stronger, braver, and ready for the challenges that lay just beyond the next door. Chapter 5. The weight of opinions. The morning sun slanted through the blinds, casting long stripes across Sophia's bedroom floor. She blinked against the light, feeling the lingering tension from yesterday's audition settle in her chest. Though she had survived her stumble, the memory of flushed cheeks and faltering lines haunted her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Breakfast was quiet. Her mother hummed in the kitchen, preparing eggs and toast, while Leo scrolled through his phone. Sophia poked at her food, thought swirling. She knew today would be different. Word of her audition had spread. Students whispered in the hallways, their voices a mixture of curiosity and judgment. By the time she entered school, the hallways felt crowded, each person's gaze magnified by her own awareness. She caught snippets of conversation. "Did you see Sophia's audition? She was so nervous. I think she might actually be good. The words hit her in waves, and the familiar sting of self-doubt surged. Her first class was literature, a room lined with books that smelled faintly of dust and ink. Sophia sat at her usual desk, hoping to sink into the routine, to shield herself from the scrutiny outside. But whispers seemed to follow her, glancing eyes flicking toward her like tiny arrows. Honora slid into the seat beside her, lowering her voice. "Ignore them," she said, voice soft but firm. "People talk, but it doesn't mean anything. You did what you could." Sophia nodded, grateful for the reminder, yet she could feel the tension coiling tighter. The voice from the fixed mirror whispered, "Everyone is judging you. You don't belong. You should just stop trying." She took a deep breath, closing her eyes briefly. She pictured the growth mirror again, the spark she had glimpsed when she persisted through mistakes. "Other people's opinions don't define me," she whispered to herself. "What matters is what I do next." During lunch, she sat alone briefly, choosing a quiet corner where she could think. Students passed by in clumps, laughing, teasing, some glancing her way. She felt the familiar itch of embarrassment but also a strange sense of clarity. The opinions surrounding her were outside her control, her effort and attitude were within it. That afternoon, in gym class, Sophia faced another kind of pressure. The team was learning a new routine for a relay, each movement timed to perfection. She stumbled at first, dropping the baton, feeling the old panic rising. Her teammates muttered under their breath, and she caught a few scornful glances. The voice of the fixed mirror surged, "You're clumsy. You don't belong. They're right to doubt you." But Sophia remembered the growth mirror. Mistakes are part of learning. Keep going. She took a deep breath, repositioned herself, and ran again. The baton passed from her to the next runner successfully. The small victory felt like sunlight piercing through clouds. After class, a few classmates approached her. Some offered encouragement, others made faintly mocking remarks. Sophia realized she didn't need to react. The judgment of others was only powerful if she allowed it to be. She thanked the kind ones with a small smile and ignored the rest. On the way home, Sophia walked through the park, noticing the wind rustling through the trees, the way the leaves clung stubbornly to branches despite the coming fall. The scene mirrored her own determination. She reflected on the events of the day, public judgment, whispers, stumbles, victories. The growth mindset was more than trying or persisting, it was about managing the internal dialogue, deciding which voices deserved attention and which were distractions. That evening, she returned to her room, notebooks spread across her desk. The play lines beckoned, waiting for rehearsal. She tried the monologue again, speaking aloud despite the fear, despite imagining every critical gaze she might encounter tomorrow. Each word came steadier, more confident, not perfect, but undeniably hers. Her reflection in the mirror on the wall caught her eye. The face staring back was tired, slightly disheveled, but alive with determination. She realized something crucial: the opinions of others were fleeting, external. What mattered was the persistence of effort, the willingness to face judgment and keep moving forward. Just as she closed her notebook, a knock sounded at her door. It was Leo, holding a flyer. "The debate team is holding extra practice tomorrow," he said, a knowing smile on his face. "I think you should go. I bet you'd crush it." Sophia felt the familiar flutter of fear, public speaking, judgment, the possibility of failure, but also a surge of courage. She had faced whispers, stumbles, and glances today. What was one more challenge compared to everything she had already confronted? She nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "I'll go," she said that night, lying in bed, the tension lingered. She realized the real challenge was ongoing, every day, a negotiation between fear and effort, between the fixed and the growth. The world outside would always have opinions, and the voice inside would always test her. But Sophia now understood that she had a choice: she could let those forces control her, or she could step forward, embrace the struggle, and continue to grow. Outside, the streetlights glimmered on wet asphalt, the wind carrying the scent of rain and possibility. Sophia's eyes closed, the quiet hum of the night surrounding her. She could feel the pull of the two mirrors again, each reflecting a possible self. The tension was electric, almost palpable. Tomorrow would demand more courage, more persistence, and the first real test of whether her growth mindset could withstand not just personal fear, but the scrutiny of the world. And somewhere deep in her chest, a spark flickered, a tiny, defiant flame that refused to be extinguished. Chapter 6. The leap forward. The morning air carried a chill that made Sophia pull her jacket tighter around her shoulders as she walked to school. Today was not like other days. Today, the debate team had invited participants to a mini-competition, a chance to speak in front of the entire auditorium. For Sophia, the thought twisted her stomach into knots. standing alone before dozens of classmates, speaking words she hadn't written herself. This was the true test of courage. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, though it held only notebooks and a pencil case. Each step toward the school doors felt deliberate, her heartbeat echoing in her chest. She remembered the first mirror Mr. Halvorsen had shown her, the fixed self that trembled at the thought of failure, and the second mirror, the growth self that persisted, learned, and embraced challenge. Inside the auditorium, rows of seats stretched endlessly, filled with students, teachers, and parents. Sophia slipped into a seat at the back, trying to make herself as small as possible. The familiar whispers and glances began, a murmur that sent the old fear whispering, "You don't belong here. You'll embarrass yourself." Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, visualizing the growth mirror. She imagined herself stumbling at first, faltering, yet continuing, learning from each mistake. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I can do this. I will try." The coach called her name. The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. Sophia felt the familiar spike of fear, a cold rush through her veins. But this time, she did not hesitate. She stood, smoothing her jacket, and walked to the stage. The microphone loomed before her, intimidating in its black, silent presence. She could hear her own breathing, shallow and quick, but she forced herself to speak, beginning her monologue. The first sentence wavered, her voice trembling, but she pressed on. Halfway through, she stumbled over a phrase, her mind racing to recover. Normally, the voice of the fixed mirror would have screamed, "Stop! You're making a fool of yourself." But she remembered the days of practice, the experiments, the debate tryout, the stumbles and recoveries. She paused for a moment, drew a breath, and continued. Each word felt heavier, more deliberate, yet freer than before. By the end of her speech, Sophia was breathless, her palms sweaty, but she stood tall. There were no resounding cheers, no dramatic applause, only polite claps and a few encouraging smiles from peers. And yet, the feeling inside her was electric. She had faced her fear, stumbled, recovered, and finished. She had leapt into the unknown and had not fallen completely. Walking off the stage, she was met by Jamal, her lab partner. "That was impressive," he said, a mix of surprise and admiration in his voice. "You didn't give up once." Sophia felt a swell of quiet pride. She realized that growth wasn't about immediate perfection, it was about persistence, courage, and the willingness to act despite fear. That evening, at home, Sophia replayed the moment in her mind. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a girl who looked tired, slightly flushed, but unmistakably alive with possibility. She recognized herself, yet she was different from yesterday, stronger, braver, more capable of facing what scared her. Her mother peeked in, smiling. "I heard about the competition today. I'm proud of you." Sophia nodded, feeling the warmth of the acknowledgement. But she knew the real pride came from herself, from the conscious decision to take the leap, to choose growth over fear. Later, alone in her room, she opened her journal and wrote about the day. She wrote about the fear, the stumbling, the final triumph, and the spark of courage that had carried her through. She reflected on how the growth mirror had guided her, transforming mistakes into steps forward. As she drifted toward sleep, the night outside was calm, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds. But inside her, a storm of possibility churned, less chaotic now, more controlled, directed by the choice to persist. She realized something profound: each leap forward required a willingness to be vulnerable, to risk judgment, to stumble publicly. And yet, each risk carried the potential for transformation, the chance to reshape not just her skills, but her sense of self. Somewhere deep inside, the two mirrors waited. The fixed self still lingered, a faint whisper warning of failure. But the growth self burned brighter now, a steady flame illuminating the path ahead. Sophia knew the tension would never vanish entirely, but she also knew that the choice to act, to embrace discomfort, had begun to define her. Tomorrow promised new challenges, new mistakes, and new opportunities for courage. And Sophia, for the first time, was not afraid of what lay ahead, because she had learned that failure was not the end. It was the beginning. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, the sound like a whisper of encouragement, a promise that the journey forward was hers to take. Chapter 7, The Test of Trust. The morning air felt heavy, almost oppressive, as Sophia made her way to school. The recent victories, the debate tryout, the play audition, still hummed in her mind, but a subtle tension had begun to creep in, whispering that not every challenge would be as manageable. Her first class was history, a bright room filled with maps, posters of famous figures, and shelves of books that smelled faintly of ink and aged paper. Today, the students were assigned a group project. Sophia's partner was Claire, a confident and charismatic girl who excelled in leadership and public speaking. Sophia admired Claire but also felt a flicker of anxiety. How would she assert herself without being overshadowed? The project required creating a presentation on a historical event, complete with visuals, research, and a narrative that would engage the entire class. Sophia, armed with meticulous notes and careful preparation, hoped her contributions would be valued. But as they began discussing the outline, Claire's tone shifted. "I think I should handle most of the speaking," Claire said, a faint edge to her voice. "You can help with the slides and notes." Sophia felt the familiar tug of the fixed mirror. "You're not good enough." Let her do it, you'll only mess it up. But she remembered the growth mirror, the spark that had carried her through the auditions, experiments, and debates. She took a deep breath. "I'd like to speak too," she said quietly but firmly. "I have ideas for the narrative." Claire's eyes flickered, a mix of surprise and mild irritation. "Well, okay," she said, though her tone was skeptical. The day passed in a blur of research and planning, but Sophia noticed a subtle shift. Claire began to dominate the discussion, often brushing aside Sophia's suggestions, sometimes ignoring her entirely. The whispers of frustration and doubt grew louder inside Sophia's mind. "Maybe she's right. Maybe you're not good enough." By evening, Sophia returned home, her backpack heavier than usual, her mind buzzing with disappointment. She had prepared diligently, but her contributions felt minimized, her voice stifled. She wondered if persistence and courage were enough, if the growth mirror could truly help when others refused to see her value. At dinner, she barely touched her food, lost in thought. Her mother noticed. "You seem distracted. Everything okay?" Sophia hesitated. "It's Claire," she admitted. "She keeps taking over our project. I try to speak up, but she doesn't listen." Her mother nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes, people don't recognize your efforts. That doesn't mean they're not important. The challenge is deciding how you respond when others don't see your worth." Sophia's heart thumped. That was exactly the question she had been wrestling with. Could she maintain her growth mindset when external forces seemed to contradict it? Could she persist when her contributions were ignored, when her effort felt invisible? That night, she sat at her desk, journal open, replaying the day. She reflected on the growth mirror, persistence, courage, learning from mistakes. She realized that this test was different from a stumble in a debate or a misstep in the play. This was about influence, respect, and self-worth. It was about standing firm when others tried to diminish her. The next morning, Sophia resolved to act. She approached Claire before class, voice steady despite the anxiety fluttering in her chest. "I want to lead part of the presentation today," she said. "I've prepared something that adds to our story." Claire hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine. Let's see it." During the presentation, Sophia's nerves flared, her palms sweating, but she began speaking. Her voice wavered at first, then grew stronger as she recited her points, explaining the narrative with clarity and passion. She caught the attention of the class, who listened attentively, nodding and reacting to the details she had woven in. By the end, even Claire seemed impressed, though she tried to mask it. Sophia felt a quiet, fierce pride. She had not just spoken, she had insisted, persisted, and earned her place, despite the obstacles and doubt. Walking home, the sky a pale shade of orange as the sun set, Sophia realized the lesson was profound. Growth was not just about skill or persistence in isolation. It was also about asserting yourself, maintaining confidence, and refusing to let others' opinions or dominance dictate your self-worth. Yet, as she climbed the staircase to her room, a lingering tension remained. She had passed this test, but the world would not always be fair, and not every challenge would be as straightforward. The mirrors were still there. The fixed self whispered, "You are lucky this time. Next time may not be so kind." While the growth self glowed, steady and determined. That night, Sophia lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The shadows of the room seemed longer than usual, stretching across her walls like silent observers. She understood that her journey was far from over. Growth was not a single leap, nor a series of simple victories. It was a path lined with tests, failures, setbacks, and occasional triumphs. And deep within, she felt a spark, fragile yet unyielding, promising that as long as she chose courage, persistence, and self-belief, the challenges ahead would not define her, they would shape her. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a sense of anticipation. Sophia's eyes closed, her mind both wary and excited. The next chapter of her journey awaited, one that would push her further than she had yet imagined. Chapter 8, The Public Failure. The morning sun streamed through the windows, painting the classroom in a warm, golden light. But Sophia's stomach churned with knots of anxiety. Today was the debate competition, the first one where she would face not just classmates, but judges, teachers, and a large audience. Weeks of preparation and courage had led to this moment, and now the weight of expectation pressed heavily on her chest. She entered the auditorium early, hoping to calm herself before the crowd arrived. The stage loomed ahead, empty but vast, the wooden floor polished to a sheen that reflected the overhead lights. Her debate partner, Max, was already there, pacing and muttering lines under his breath. "Hey," he said, noticing her, "ready for this?" Sophia nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. She had learned to persist through fear, to embrace mistakes as opportunities, but the stakes felt higher than anything she had faced. The audience began to fill the seats, parents, students, teachers, all watching, judging, silently measuring every step, every word. Sophia's heart thumped in rhythm with the growing noise. The fixed mirror's voice whispered sharply, "You'll mess this up. Everyone will see you fail. You're not good enough." She closed her eyes briefly, envisioning the growth mirror. She pictured herself stumbling, correcting, continuing, learning from each error. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the belief that effort mattered more than perfection. When it was their turn, Max and Sophia stepped onto the stage. The first moments went smoothly. Max spoke confidently, presenting the opening arguments. Then it was Sophia's turn. Her voice started strong, clear, and steady. But halfway through her main point, she blanked. The words she had rehearsed countless times slipped away. A cold wave of panic swept through her chest. She stumbled, faltered, tried to recover, but the rhythm of her speech had shattered. The judge's eyes felt like spotlights, her peers' whispers like needles. The voice of the fixed mirror roared, "You failed. This is proof. You don't belong." Sophia's hands gripped the podium, her heart pounding in her ears. The stage seemed impossibly wide, the audience impossibly attentive. For a moment, she wanted to vanish, to sink beneath the floorboards, to retreat from the scrutiny that now felt unbearable. Then, deep within, a flicker of the growth mirror stirred. This is learning. Mistakes are steps, not endings. Keep going. She took a slow, deliberate breath and pushed forward. The words returned, hesitant but present. She completed her argument, not perfectly, but fully, asserting her points with courage she had not known she possessed a moment before. The applause was polite, less than she had hoped for, and a few classmates exchanged doubtful glances. Sophia felt the sting, the familiar ache of imperfection. Yet beneath it, a strange sense of triumph emerged. She had faced public failure. She had faltered and recovered. She had learned in real time the limits of fear and the power of persistence. Backstage, Max clapped her on the shoulder. "That was rough," he said, "but you kept going. Most people would have frozen." Sophia nodded, her chest tight but alive with energy. She realized that the value of the experience was not in the applause or approval, but in the courage it took to continue despite humiliation. The fixed mirror's voice still lingered, faint and sharp, but it was no longer in control. The growth mirror, steady and persistent, glowed brighter with each breath. On the way home, Sophia walked slowly, replaying the moments in her head. She thought about the blank spot in her speech, the stumbles, the quick recovery. She understood that growth was not linear, and mastery was never immediate. It was messy, unpredictable, and sometimes humiliating, but it was also transformative. That evening, she sat at her desk, reviewing the points she had struggled with, rewriting and practicing. She imagined the next competition, the next opportunity, knowing that mistakes were not a sign of failure but a guide for improvement. As she lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, the shadows seemed to stretch and sway, alive with possibility. She realized the truth she had learned so far: growth required not just effort, but courage in the face of embarrassment, persistence when progress was invisible, and the willingness to face fear over and over again. Outside, the night was quiet, the wind rustling leaves with a gentle insistence. Sophia's eyes closed, and deep inside, she felt the spark of the growth mirror pulse stronger. She had fallen publicly, stumbled in front of many, yet she had risen. And in that rising, she glimpsed the promise of something far greater than success alone, a resilience that no failure could extinguish. But as sleep began to claim her, a quiet tension lingered in her chest. She sensed that the next challenge would not just test her skills or courage, it would test her understanding of herself, her ability to integrate these lessons into who she was becoming. And in that anticipation, Sophia felt the electric pull of possibility, the edge of something new and demanding, waiting just beyond tomorrow. Chapter 9. The fear within. The morning was thick with fog, blurring the edges of the schoolyard and muffling the usual chatter. Sophia walked slowly across the pavement, her backpack heavier than usual, not from books, but from the weight of anticipation. Today was the school talent showcase, a chance for students to perform, to present something they had worked on, and for Sophia, an opportunity that terrified her more than any debate or play audition had. She had decided to present a short speech about the lessons she had been learning, about growth, persistence, and facing fear. In her mind, the words felt powerful, meaningful, yet the idea of sharing them with the whole school sent cold spikes of anxiety through her chest. The auditorium was vast, filled with folding chairs, banners of past showcases, and the quiet hum of nervous energy. Students chatted in groups, some rehearsing, others fidgeting. The stage looked impossibly wide from the back row, the lights glaring down like invisible eyes. Sophia found a seat near the side, pulling her jacket closer around her shoulders. Her palms were clammy, her stomach tight. The fixed mirror whispered sharply, "You'll mess up. Everyone will see. You're not ready." She closed her eyes for a moment, seeking the quiet spark of the growth mirror. She pictured herself speaking, faltering perhaps, but persisting, learning from the fear itself. She took a slow, deliberate breath and whispered, "I can do this. I will try." When her name was called, her heart leapt violently, a mixture of terror and determination. She rose and walked toward the stage, each step deliberate, feeling the eyes of dozens of students following her. The first words trembled out of her mouth. She stumbled over a phrase, her voice quivering. The audience seemed enormous, faceless in its attention. For a moment, she froze, the panic almost overwhelming. The voice of the fixed mirror hissed, "Stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Everyone is judging you." Sophia gripped the edge of the podium, grounding herself. She remembered the lessons of past failures, the debate, the play, the stumbles. Each had left her scarred, but stronger, more resilient. She drew a deep breath and continued. As she spoke, the fear began to shift. The trembling in her voice became intentional, the pauses deliberate. She shared her story of mistakes, persistence, and small victories. She admitted moments of doubt, moments of failure, and moments when she had chosen to rise again. A ripple moved through the audience, not loud, but noticeable. Heads nodded, eyes softened, a few students leaned forward. The voice of the fixed mirror still lingered, but it was quieter now, almost cautious, as if realizing it could not dominate completely. By the end of her speech, Sophia was breathless, her hands still damp, her cheeks flushed. She stepped back, feeling the full force of what she had just done, confronted the fear within herself, exposed her vulnerabilities, and survived. Backstage, her friend Nora rushed over, eyes wide. "That was amazing," she said. "You were incredible. Really inspiring." Sophia nodded, her chest tight with emotion. She had not aimed for perfection. She had aimed for honesty, courage, and growth. That, she realized, was the most difficult challenge of all. Later, in her bedroom, Sophia reflected on the day. She had faced a fear deeper than any stage fright, any competition, any judgment from peers. The fear was no longer external, it lived inside her, in the quiet, insistent voice that tried to define her limits. And she had learned that this fear could be acknowledged without surrendering to it. She opened her journal, writing down every thought, every feeling. She wrote about the trembling voice, the moments of hesitation, and the slow, steady reclaiming of courage. She realized that growth was not just about skills or talent, it was about the inner dialogue, the willingness to embrace discomfort, and the courage to act despite uncertainty. Outside, the night was calm, the fog thinning, revealing slivers of stars above. Sophia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling both exhausted and alive. The growth mirror sparkled faintly in her mind, a steady pulse that promised more challenges, more lessons, and more opportunities to rise. And somewhere deep inside, she sensed the tension yet to come. The next challenge would be bigger, more demanding, and would push her not just to act, but to transform the very way she understood herself. Chapter 10. The Turning Point. The morning sun filtered through the clouds, a pale, promising light that painted the schoolyard in shades of gold and grey. Sophia walked across the pavement with a quiet determination, feeling the echo of past victories and failures in every step. Today was different, not just another test or audition, but a moment that could redefine her path entirely. The school announced an opportunity for a student-led initiative, a project that would impact the entire school, a chance to create, lead, and inspire. Students could submit ideas, form teams, and present their visions to the faculty. Sophia's heart raced. This was not a debate, a play, or a talent showcase. This was bigger. It required vision, courage, and the ability to persist in the face of doubt. She found herself in the library, surrounded by books, papers, and the quiet hum of students brainstorming. Ideas swirled in her mind, each one larger and riskier than the last. The voice of the fixed mirror hissed, "You're not ready. Your ideas aren't good enough. Others will laugh at you." As Sophia closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The growth mirror flickered in her imagination, reminding her of every stumble she had survived, the debates, the auditions, the speeches. Fear is a sign of growth. Step forward anyway, it whispered. She began sketching her proposal on a blank sheet of paper. It was ambitious, a program that combined creativity, community, and mentorship, allowing students to learn from one another and explore new talents. Each line she wrote, each idea she developed, felt daring and exhilarating. By afternoon, Sophia had completed a rough draft. She approached the notice board where submissions were collected, her hands trembling slightly as she pinned her proposal. The weight of visibility pressed down on her, anyone could see, judge, or dismiss it. Yet, she felt a spark of exhilaration. This was action. This was growth. The next day, the announcements were made. Sophia's project had been selected as one of the finalists. The room buzzed with excitement, and a few classmates approached her, curiosity and admiration shining in their eyes. Even Claire, her sometimes rival, nodded with a faint smile, and now, Sophia faced a new challenge, presenting her vision to the faculty and her peers. Unlike previous stages, this one required more than courage. It demanded conviction, clarity, and the ability to inspire belief in others. The pressure was immense, but she felt a quiet steadiness. She had stumbled, faltered, and recovered before. She could do it again. The day of the presentation arrived. The auditorium was packed, filled with students, teachers, and a few parents. Sophia's hands were clammy, her stomach tight, but she stepped onto the stage, visualizing the growth mirror with each breath. She began to speak, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. As she outlined her project, describing the vision, the benefits, and the possibilities, she noticed subtle shifts in the audience, nods, attentive faces, murmurs of interest. The energy in the room transformed from judgment to curiosity. Halfway through, a question came from the back, a skeptical teacher, challenging a detail in her plan. For a moment, panic threatened to rise, but Sophia paused, drew a breath, and responded thoughtfully. She didn't have to be perfect, she only had to show understanding and persistence. Her answer was met with quiet approval. By the end of the presentation, applause filled the room. Sophia felt an overwhelming rush, not just of relief, but of validation, proof that growth, courage, and persistence could transform ideas into reality. Walking off the stage, she felt a surge of pride, tempered by humility. She realized that the growth mirror wasn't a guarantee of success, but a guide for navigating challenges, learning from mistakes, and persisting despite fear. That evening, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the science experiments, the debates, the auditions, the public failures, and the personal fears. Each stumble had built her, each moment of courage had shaped her, and each choice to persist had expanded her sense of possibility. Yet, even in triumph, she sensed the tension of what lay ahead. Growth was not a destination, it was a path that demanded continuous effort, self-reflection, and courage. The next challenges would test her resilience in new ways, pushing her to integrate all she had learned and to inspire others along the journey. Outside, the wind carried a faint, electric charge, rustling leaves like whispers of promise. Sophia's eyes closed, a smile playing on her lips. She had reached a turning point, but the road beyond remained uncertain, brimming with opportunities, risks, and lessons yet to come. Chapter 11. The Crucible. The morning air was sharp, crisp, carrying the scent of dew and anticipation. Sophia walked to school with a focused stride, the turning point of yesterday still pulsing in her chest. But today, she knew, would not be easy. The culmination of her efforts, the student initiative she had championed, was about to face its ultimate test, the first major event where her leadership, vision, and persistence would be scrutinized by faculty, students, and the wider community. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, though it held nothing more than notebooks, presentation materials, and her carefully prepared notes. The tension inside her was palpable, a storm of excitement, fear, and determination. She remembered the growth mirror, glowing faintly in her mind, reminding her of every misstep, every stumble, and every triumph that had shaped her. As she entered the auditorium, the full weight of responsibility hit her. Students were busy setting up stations, preparing materials, arranging chairs, and checking microphones. Parents and faculty were trickling in, murmuring questions and assessments. Sophia's heart pounded. This was no rehearsal. This was real. Her team, including Claire and a few other classmates, looked at her expectantly. Claire gave a small nod, the kind that said, "I'll follow you here, but you better lead well." The fixed mirror's voice whispered sharply, "If you fail now, everything falls apart." "You're not ready for this responsibility." Sophia took a deep breath, shutting out the doubt. She focused on the growth mirror, on persistence, learning, and action. She reminded herself, mistakes were inevitable, obstacles were part of the journey, and leadership meant guiding others through uncertainty, not pretending it didn't exist. The event began, and chaos ensued. Equipment malfunctioned, a projector flickered and went dark, and one of the younger students froze during a demonstration. Panic rose, but Sophia stepped forward, calmly redirecting her team, improvising solutions, and providing reassurance. She could feel her voice steadying as she moved through each problem, the energy of action replacing the paralyzing grip of fear. When it was her turn to speak, Sophia stepped to the center of the auditorium, the audience watching with silent anticipation. She spoke with clarity and passion, explaining the vision of the project, highlighting the contributions of every team member, and sharing the purpose behind each activity. Her words were imperfect, yet compelling. She stumbled once or twice, corrected herself, and kept moving forward. A moment came when a skeptical parent raised a question about the feasibility of part of the program. Sophia felt the old panic threatening to rise, but she paused, considered the concern, and responded thoughtfully, acknowledging the challenge while proposing a solution. The parent's frown softened, the tension in the room eased. By the end of the event, applause filled the auditorium. Students smiled, faculty nodded in approval, and Sophia felt an intense surge of accomplishment. But more importantly, she felt the transformation within herself, the ability to navigate uncertainty, to act decisively despite fear, and to persist through setbacks while inspiring others to do the same. Later, in the quiet of the empty auditorium, Sophia sat on the stage, reflecting on the journey. The fixed mirror's voice had not disappeared, it lingered faintly, reminding her that growth was never easy. But the growth mirror pulsed steadily, a warm, unshakable light. She realized something profound: the crucible had not just tested her abilities or her courage. It had tested her mindset, the integration of persistence, resilience, and the willingness to learn from every challenge. She had discovered that growth was not a series of successes or failures, but a continual engagement with effort, learning, and self-belief. As she finally left the auditorium, stepping into the cool evening air, she felt the tension in her chest loosen, replaced by a quiet, steady pride. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers of new challenges, new opportunities, and the next stages of growth that awaited her. Sophia understood that her journey was far from over. Each success, each failure, each decision to persist would shape the next chapter of her life. And deep inside, she felt a spark, a defiant, luminous flame that promised she would continue forward, even when the path was uncertain, steep, or frightening. Yet, as she looked up at the darkening sky, she sensed one more challenge approaching, a culmination that would require not just persistence and courage, but mastery of everything she had learned so far. The final chapter of this journey awaited, carrying the tension and promise of transformation. Chapter 12, The Transformation. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of promise and tension. Sophia walked to school with a steady stride, her mind alive with anticipation. Today was the final event of the school year, the showcase of all student initiatives, where every project, every idea, and every effort would be displayed to the entire school and visiting community members. This was no ordinary test. This was the culmination of months of learning, failing, persisting, and growing. Her backpack felt unusually light. She carried only her notes, a small notebook of reflections, and a quiet determination that had been forged through countless challenges. The echoes of past auditions, debates, public failures, and triumphs pulsed inside her chest, each memory a testament to her resilience. The auditorium was alive with energy, banners fluttering, tables arranged with displays, and students buzzing with nervous excitement. Parents and teachers wondered, whispering comments and exchanging judgments. Sophia's project was in the center, her team busy arranging materials, rehearsing presentations, and preparing demonstrations. Claire approached, offering a small smile. "Ready for the big one?" she asked. Sophia nodded. This time, there was no fear of dominance, no tension over who would speak. She felt the growth mirror steadying her from within, a reminder that leadership meant guidance, collaboration, and persistence, not perfection. The event began. Problems emerged immediately, a projector flickered again, a younger student froze, and one display table toppled. Chaos threatened to unravel everything. But Sophia moved like a conductor, calmly redirecting her team, solving problems as they appeared, and keeping her own nerves in check. Each challenge was a spark for action, each mistake an opportunity to demonstrate resilience. When it was her turn to speak, the auditorium fell silent. Sophia stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. She spoke with confidence, passion, and authenticity, integrating lessons learned from every stumble, every falter, every moment of doubt. She shared the vision of her project, the purpose behind each activity, and the personal journey that had led her to this point. A skeptical parent questioned a detail, and a judge asked for evidence of impact. Sophia paused, breathed, and responded thoughtfully. Her answers were honest, precise, and filled with insight. The audience listened intently, leaning forward, drawn into her words. By the end of her presentation, applause filled the auditorium, louder and more heartfelt than any she had experienced before. Students, teachers, and visitors approached, congratulating her, asking questions, and expressing genuine interest. But Sophia felt something deeper than recognition or approval. She felt transformation. Sitting quietly backstage later, she reflected on her journey. The fixed mirror's voice had not vanished, it still lingered, faint and cautious, but the growth mirror burned brightly, steady and unwavering. She realized that growth was not about avoiding mistakes or seeking perfection. It was about embracing fear, persisting through failure, learning continuously, and acting with courage even when the outcome was uncertain. Sophia's heart swelled with understanding. Every stumble in a debate, every misstep in a play audition, every faltering speech had been a step toward this moment. Each challenge had refined her courage, shaped her persistence, and strengthened her belief in herself. She had learned to face judgment without crumbling, to assert herself without arrogance, and to lead without dominating. As she stepped outside, the sun breaking through the clouds, casting the world in warm golden light, she felt the culmination of months of effort settle within her. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering encouragement, as if acknowledging her journey. She realized that the mirrors, the fixed and the growth, were not adversaries, but guides. One showed limits, the other possibilities. And she had chosen which one would define her path. Sophia smiled, feeling a quiet, steady power in her chest. She was no longer just the girl who stumbled in auditions or froze in debates. She was someone who could face fear, persist through uncertainty, inspire others, and grow continuously. She had been transformed, not by a single success or failure, but by the deliberate choice to act, to persist, and to learn every step of the way. And as she walked home, the wind carrying the faint scent of blossoms and rain, Sophia understood that her journey was just beginning. Growth was not a destination, it was a way of living, a mindset that would shape every challenge, every opportunity, and every dream she dared to pursue. The tension of what lay ahead was no longer frightening. It was exhilarating, filled with possibility. Sophia had faced herself, faced the world, and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for everything yet to come. The mirrors remained, but she no longer feared them. She had chosen her reflection. She had embraced growth, and the world, vast and uncertain, waited. Thanks for listening. If this story sparked new ideas for your own growth, we want to hear from you. What's the next audiobook you'd love us to bring to life here on Momentum Mind? Drop your suggestions in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a chance to fuel your momentum. Keep growing, keep moving, and we'll see you in the next one.